Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and it is time for Game Week 21's episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid, where we have a look at some of the players you might be thinking about moving around in your team, whether that's in or out, and whether you should do or not. We're going to talk about that today. If you do enjoy this video, guys, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. But first of all, let's have a look at the rules of the video. So buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in, sells are players you probably have but should consider removing, keeps are players you might be thinking of removing but I think you should keep them, and avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now but I think they are potential traps that should be avoided. 2 players in each category. Let's start off with some buys. Okay, so our first buy is going to be the man with a PhD in dribbling, Kaoru Mitoma, who is a 5 million midfielder, super cheap. He was 4.9 million just yesterday, but he has had a price change, and you know what? It's kind of justified, and I do prefer Mitoma to a Solly March, for example, just because he is just slightly better, I would say, in terms of his underlying numbers. They look really good and he really does pass the eye test, where I do wonder. I think March is also a really, really good pick, but I do feel like that Mitoma is he's just got that slightly better stats. He just looks slightly better on the pitch when you watch him play. He's getting in those really dangerous positions. So it is tough to choose between these 2 players, but I'm going to put my money behind Mitoma. I know he hasn't scored as many points as March in recent weeks, but the eye test and the underlying numbers say that if we're looking from this point onwards, I think Mitoma is going to score more points. So that's why I'm putting him in the buy section today. Now, if you look at these fixtures as well, Leicester away. Leicester kind of in turmoil at the moment. Bournemouth at home. That's a really good fixture at the moment. Crystal Palace, their defensive numbers have dropped off a cliff since the break, and Fulham at home is always a nice fixture as well. So the fixtures look fantastic. The underlying numbers are very good. You can see 2.38 expected goals, 0.41 expected assists. So in terms of getting creative and getting assists, it's not so likely, but certainly the expected goals are very, very good right now, and it does look really good. This is in 4 appearances, remember, as well. So we're talking about almost 2.7, 2.8 expected returns in just 4 appearances, which is amazing. He is going to be nailed on now on the left wing as well. Trossard is out the door. He is going to be leaving Brighton, that's for sure. So Mitoma is super nailed on as well. So there's so much to like about this player at a super cheap price. And one more thing I should note, guys, is that I know a lot of you guys are thinking about potential blank game weeks, and Brighton are pretty likely to blank game week in game week 25, which is not ideal. But the great thing with Mitoma is that he is so cheap that he's one of those players you can afford to bench in a game week where he does blank. And in the kind of interim between now and game week 25, we've still got 4 game weeks to gain some points as well. So I don't want you guys to close your eyes too much to the players who might blank in 25. Well, there is a lot of points on offer between now and then. So I reckon Mitoma is probably one of my favourite buys of this game week, whether that's switching up your 4.5 million midfielder, you know, Andreas Pereira, maybe you've got him and you want to move him to Mitoma. Maybe you've got another midfielder that you don't really like. Maybe you could switch that player to Mitoma instead. There's plenty of options here. He's so cheap that you can pretty much afford to get him in for any player that you have on your roster right now. So here's going to be the first buy of the video. And how can we forget Martin Odegaard? Odegaard is, obviously a player who's been absolutely smashing it right now, and he has been overperforming big time recently, I can't lie. 4 goals and 3 assists. It's unlikely he's going to be able to continue that consistently for the rest of the season. If he does, I would probably make him like the best player in the world, which I don't think he is, but he is still a fantastic player. Absolute gravy. But yeah, again, look at these numbers. Really, really good right now, even if he is overperforming. Even if he's performed at the kind of level that his underlying numbers suggest, that is still absolutely insane for a 6.8 million midfielder. And I think everyone's kind of acknowledged by now that Odegaard is the best Arsenal asset to own at the moment. Better than Martinelli, better than Saka, better than Nketiah, better than the defenders as well, you would probably say as well. So really good numbers, really decent price for him still as well. And I think the most important thing about Odegaard is that you are going to want to try and get him in by game week 23. You've got to get him in at some point before game week 23. By that point, he is going to become absolutely essential. I would definitely want to make sure I have him by game week 22 as well. And I feel like if you are looking to make some transfers this week, Odegaard is a good forward-thinking one, even though the game week 21 fixture against Manchester United is not perfect, it's not ideal, but look, I think you can go one week week early on Ødegaard. I don't think you absolutely have to, but I think it could be a pretty decent decision to make. I think that could go very, very well for you if you did go 1 week early, because he's just in such good form right now that I do like it. Whereas, you know, some of the other Arsenal attackers, would I go for Martinelli this week or Nketiah or Saka? Potentially not, but Ødegaard, the form that he's in, we've seen that he's a big game player as well. He takes a lot of shots from range, kind of creates and passes in those tight little gaps, and does a lot of the things that a lot of other players can't do. So, really good player, probably arguably the best midfielder in the Premier League right now. I know people are going to be not very happy with that. Man United fans will probably say Casemiro. Man City fans will probably say De Bruyne. Liverpool fans maybe won't say anything, but the point is that Ødegaard is a really good player right now, decent price, great numbers, and after this Man United game, he's going to be pretty much essential, so why not go 1 week early? Onto some sells. I think it's time to finally cut the umbilical cord on Foden. Yeah, it's been really difficult to own Foden, I think, for a lot of people, myself included. Going into game week 20, we knew we had a double game week, so maybe there was potential to keep him in that week. But I think now that that double game week's out the way, we've got 2 single game weeks in a row. I think now is the kind of time where we can just take a step back and say, all right, I don't want to play Pep Roulette anymore with Phil Foden. I think it's time to let the guy go, remove him from my team. He's quite expensive, probably too expensive for what he does offer in terms of minutes. Even his like kind of underlying numbers you can see on screen, he's played about, I don't know, 200 minutes, something like that, around 200 minutes over the past 5 game weeks. And even like in 200 minutes, 0.51 XG, 0.42 expected assist, like it's not like amazing. It's decent, don't get me wrong, but it's not like so good that you must keep him just in case he does get game time sort of thing, as it kind of was before, where if he did start a game, he was probably going to absolutely destroy it. And don't get me wrong, Foden still could destroy any game week, you know, do so well when he does start, but Man City, the form that they're in right now, it's not quite clicking at the moment. You would say that Foden is probably not in the preferred 11 at this moment. You'd probably say Grealish on the left, Mahrez on the right. Where does Foden really fit in that? So yeah, a difficult player to own, and I think now that that double game week is over, him alongside maybe some of your other Man City players who you've not been fully happy with, this might be a time to jump off them. But some of those more nailed on Man City players I would try and hold on to just for that game week 23, that double there. Wolves is a good fixture as well at home. Even that Spurs game away in game week 22, pretty decent as well. And we have got one more Man City game to play in game week 20 as well. So yeah, kind of keep an eye on that one as well before committing to any decisions. But I would say it's a good hopping off point for Phil Foden. Second sell is Salah, and you will notice that his numbers are pretty much the same as Kaoru Mitoma's, but unfortunately he costs like triple the price. 12.8 million midfielder. Yes, Salah has got fairly good-ish underlying numbers. I would say that these are good numbers, but he has kind of not been really performing. He's not been finishing his chances. His teammates that he's kind of been creating for have not been finishing their chances either. It's just not been going very well. And we go into the next kind of group of fixtures. We've got Chelsea, we've got Wolves, we've got Newcastle away there. And even though the Everton game is quite nice, you know, it's just not quite perfect. It's not exactly what we want. And even that game week 23, who are you taking? Are you taking Salah against Everton, or are you taking a De Bruyne against, you know, Aston Villa and Arsenal with the double game week there? So yeah, difficult time for Salah really, and it's difficult to own him as well because he is so expensive. The expectations are super high when you're paying this much money for one of your FPL players, that you can't really justify it anymore, which is a shame because going into the season, I'm sure we all would have said Salah absolutely must own. Crazy good player, does really well, particularly early on in the season. Hasn't quite worked for him this season so far, and I feel like just because of his price, we kind of got to get rid of him and kind of reinvest that money elsewhere in our teams, I think. On to keeps, Martinelli. A lot of people selling Martinelli, which I find a little bit wacky. Numbers actually pretty good. 12 shots, 11 in the box over the past 5. Creating a little bit as well. He's actually got 2 goals and 2 assists in his last 5 appearances. What more do you want from him, really? That's pretty decent, isn't it? I know he has blanked twice in a row, but we've got to put that in context. Remember, guys, last 2 games have been pretty tricky fixtures against Spurs and against Newcastle as well. So I think it's a little bit harsh to be ditching Martinelli based on, you know, 2 blanks that he's not played badly in, just hasn't got FPL points in those 2 fixtures. And I know a lot of people will be tempted to make the somewhat sideways switch to Ødegaard. You'll notice that Martinelli's numbers, whilst they're not quite as good as Ødegaard's, they are close, and his numbers are actually actually better than Saka's at the moment as well. So he's still slightly ahead of Saka at that much cheaper price. So I would not make the sideways switch. I think that's a bit of a waste of a transfer. And I think after this Manchester United game in particular, I'll probably be looking to add Ødegaard to supplement Martinelli rather than to replace him. I think we can go with more than one Arsenal midfielders there. I think that would probably be a pretty good move to make, to be fair. So yeah, I like Martinelli. I think he's a good player, and it's not just because he looks a little bit like me, but it's also because his numbers are good. He is still returning. Yes, fair enough, not in the last 2 games, but going forward, there's going to be some slightly easier fixtures. We've got that Everton game. We've got the double game week there. We've got that Aston Villa game in 24 as well. After this Manchester United game, you're probably going to really want Martinelli again, and you're going to have a lot of money invested in him. I would not be knee-jerking him out just because he's blanks for 2 games in a row. I don't think that's necessarily indicative of something that's going to continue to happen. I think he's a good player. I think you're good to keep him. And I'd also keep Tony Martial. So, yeah, Martial has obviously got a big yellow Dorito of death next to his name in the FPL app and website, which scares people. I do understand that. But look, he was fit enough to play half a game in the first part of Gameweek 20. I think he'll start again against Crystal Palace, if I'm honest. And yeah, I think he's going to be good to go for, you know, the next several game weeks. He is the main striker for Manchester United. He is their starting striker. He is their main striker. Weghorst coming in. I know that's scaring a lot of people, thinking, oh, Weghorst has come in to be the new Manchester United number 9. Think about that sentence for a second there. No, Ten Hag has been very complimentary of Martial, and it's very, very clear that he is the preferred favourite striker, and he's kind of a real key component to the way that Manchester United actually want to set up. And Weghorst is obviously come in there to be somewhat of a backup, because we know Martial's injury record is not particularly good. So in the instances that Martial is injured or unfit, Weghorst is going to be there to deputise for him. But right now, or certainly going forward, I think Martial is going to be available. And the big reason, I know this Arsenal away fixture is not great, and you're probably thinking, I don't really want to own him for this game. Hey, maybe you could bench him, because the reason why I would keep Martial is because in game week 22, I think Manchester United have a very, very good chance of a double game week. There is a lot of pressure mounting on the schedule makers to fit in some of these Man United games that need to be kind of scheduled in somewhere, because Manchester United seems to be doing quite well in the Cups, and there's not going to be much opportunity going into the future to schedule more double game weeks for them. So we need to do it soon, and game week 22 is possibly going to be free. It looks like that's going to be free and open, which means 22 could be a double game week for Manchester United versus Crystal Palace and Leeds United. Both of those fixtures in there, which is just going to be really good, really, really good. And I think if you've got a player like Martial, who's got decent numbers, yes, he's not been quite hitting them, but 2.17 expected goals in the minutes that he's played is actually really quite good for a 6.6 million forward, particularly. And yeah, if you kept kind of a double game week in 22, you're going to really regret selling him in 21. We're not going to find out about game week 22 quite yet, but I would keep a real close eye on this one. And yeah, I really would be thinking of keeping Martial. Still a very good player. Whenever he's available, he is going to have those opportunities to score goals. Man United are in great form right now. I think it would be a real shame to sell him just because, you know, there's a yellow triangle next to his name. He's almost there. He's almost ready to play. The reason he was subbed because he wasn't quite fit to play 90 minutes. I would imagine by the time Game Week 21 rolls around, he is going to be fit to play, you know, 80, 90 minutes, which is good. By Game Week 22, then we're absolutely laughing. He's going to be back in business, so to speak. So, yeah, I think Martial is a keep. On to some avoids, and I'm going to put Luke Shaw in the avoid section, which is controversial, I know, but I really just feel like Shaw is an amazing player to own. If you have him already, you absolutely must keep him. But if you don't have him, I think you can afford to wait one more game week for that Crystal Palace fixture and the potential for a double game week in 22. Arsenal away. I know a lot of you guys will say, oh, Man United are going to beat Arsenal. But look, Arsenal are playing very well at the moment, and it's a difficult one to call. And you would imagine that Arsenal probably do get a goal in that game, which is going to wipe out Shaw's chances of a clean sheet. If we're looking for attacking returns for Shaw as well, Arsenal, one of the toughest defences in the league, if not the toughest defence in the league, potentially. So, again, it's going to be really, really difficult for him to get any attacking contributions as well, which kind of spells out maybe a 2-pointer, a 1-pointer in this game. You know, even if Man United win, you know, is it going to be a 2-1? Is it going to be a 1-1? Can you really foresee a situation where Man United keep a clean sheet or Arsenal keep a clean sheet, to be fair? I personally think, yes, it's possible, but would we want to bet on that? No, I don't think we would. So unless you just really have a defender right now in your team that you're desperate to get rid of and you don't really care who you bring in, you're just looking to get a long-term solution and you want to do it right now and you feel like you need to do it right now, then fair enough, go for Luke Shaw. But if you kind of got a player who's actually okay already, you don't have to make this transfer and it's a bit more of a luxury transfer, then I would be avoiding Luke Shaw. I think Luke Shaw, to go for him this week, is kind of a little bit of a luxury transfer and I think a bit of a waste. And I think whatever you've got right now, there's a very good chance they're actually going to be a slightly better option, if not equal better option as Luke Shaw. And information is power. You know, the longer we can hold off and get Shaw when you absolutely have to, you maybe get access to new information. Maybe there's injuries, maybe there's different situations, double game weeks, blank game weeks, and all this other kind of stuff that might be of interest to you guys. So yeah, for now, I would say if you don't have Luke Shaw already, you can afford to wait one more week. And finally, Miguel Almiron. So I was actually tempted to put him on the sell list. I really was. But at the end of the day, I kind of feel like you don't have to sell Almiron. I don't think he's an absolute must sell. But I know a lot of people are still buying him. And that is something I definitely do disagree with, because Almiron is really going out of fashion in FPL right now. Yeah, crazy to say. I know he was like the golden child of FPL for a little while. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Since the break, it has kind of gone downhill for Almiron since kind of game week 17 onwards. He's just not taking as many shots. He's not creating as much. I think Newcastle in general are not creating as many chances. And, you know, Almiron was overperforming a lot on his numbers. And even in the last 5, you can still see he's still slightly overperforming. The numbers have dropped quite substantially as well, so it's not looking good, to be honest, and I don't think he's going to be scoring too many FPL points even in these really nice fixtures. And one other thing that I think we do need to consider is that we saw Isak be substituted on for Almiron in game week 20, and we wonder, is that going to be something that's going to happen more in the future? Are we going to have situations where some games Almiron is not even going to be starting the game because Isak is going to be the man starting, leading the line for Newcastle alongside Callum Wilson, and maybe Almiron does actually get his minutes reduced, not just being substituted off early, but also not even starting games occasionally. And I think there is a good chance of that happening. So I wouldn't say you absolutely have to sell Almiron. I think there is still a little bit of a player right there, and maybe you can get the odd assist or goal from him over the next few game weeks. But in general, I think we do need to be looking forward elsewhere. I think even Almiron owners will be looking to sell him very soon, which means we probably don't want to think about buying him, do we? We're going to be probably looking more closely at some Arsenal midfielders in particular, maybe some Manchester United midfielders if they get the double game week in 22. And right now, we're already thinking about Brighton midfielders as well, Mitoma, March. So yeah, there's not really a place for Almiron right now, is basically what I'm saying. And one more thing to note, guys. I cannot explain to you how weird it was for me to put, you know, you can see obviously the fixtures on screen right now, to put Liverpool at home in game week 24 as a green fixture. But if you're an attacker, that is a green fixture, isn't it? Crazy. I know, absolutely mad, but, you know, you do actually fancy an attacker at home against Liverpool at the moment, don't you? But yeah, there we go. That's a slight sidetrack there, but yeah, Almiron, going to be an avoid for me. Don't think we should be buying him. Right, guys, in conclusion, I do think we do need to be a little bit patient on our transfers at the moment. We've still got a couple of games to play in Game Week 21. There's going to be cup games as well between now and the deadline. As always, information is power. So, yeah, if you can try and hold off making transfers, then I would advise to do that. We saw a lot of people get burnt by going for early transfers last game week. And this week, I think, unless you are really, really tight on budget and, you know, a price change is going to screw you over, then I would prefer to wait, I think. Another thing, I know a lot of people are saying, don't pick players from Newcastle, don't pick players from Man United, don't pick players from Brighton, don't pick players from Brentford because they might blank in game week 25. And in all likeliness, they probably will blank in 25. But as long as you are kind of able to use transfers between, you know, game weeks 24, 2025 to make those changes or remove some of those players so you can bench your Brentford players, your Newcastle players, your United players, etc, etc, then I think it's actually not such a bad thing, because these are teams that also have really good fixtures in the short term, and I feel like they actually could like make up for the fact that maybe you have to sell them or for a -4, or maybe, you know, you have to play them and they get you a 0-pointer. As long as they score a lot of points in the interim, I think that's absolutely fine. So don't be put off too much. Be aware of it, obviously. You don't want to overload your team with these these players and find yourself screwed in game week 25. But I don't think we should completely ignore them either. And of course, if you still have your free hit, you do have the option of playing your free hit in game week 25 and removing them all for 1 week only. There is that as well, maybe a wild card, but hey, I think I would probably prefer to save those chips, but it's just an option. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy this one, please do leave a like and please do subscribe as well. And let me know what you think about the buys, the sells, the keeps and avoids today. Is there any ones there that you really disagree with, or maybe you really agree with, or maybe there's some other players you would like to put in some different categories that I haven't mentioned today? Be interested to hear some of your thoughts, guys. But thank you so much for watching it today, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with an 100 experts video. But until then, thank you once again for watching, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.